Welcome to Depth of Field, an independent filmmaking podcast hosted by Dr. Mike White and Shelby Hagerden, independent filmmakers and industry professionals. Episodes will touch on recent films, the state of the industry, the regional scene in Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota, the occasional gear discussion, and interviews. Stay up to date with our current episodes on Spotify and YouTube.
Hello and welcome to the Depth of Field podcast for the week of March 21st, 2024. I am Dr. Mike White.
And I'm Shelby Hagerden.
And in this week's episode, we're going to cover so many things, right, Shelby?
So many things.
So many things. We're, first of all, going to do our review of two films, The Zone of Interest by the great Jonathan Glazer. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, a second one of a film you may not be as familiar with called 1001 by A.V. Rockwell.
Indeed.
And then, of course, in Industry Buzz, we're going to talk about Nikon and how Nikon acquired the camera manufacturer RED.
Yes.
We're going to talk about Iowa's film tax incentive, how it's moved forward. Of course, we had a huge episode a week ago about the Nebraska tax incentive and how it's moved forward. Also, we're going to talk about Christine Burright. And we're going to talk to Christine Burright and director Tony Bonacci of their great new film, The Headliner, which was produced in Omaha. Mm-hmm. So, Shelby, I think we'll start with The Zone of Interest.
Yes.
So, The Zone of Interest is, it's actually, I can't quite figure this out. In some places, they call it a Polish film. In other places, they call it an English film.
I think most people are referring to it as a Polish film because it's, predominantly in German and Polish. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what people are predominantly going with, but Jonathan Glazer is not Polish.
He's an Englishman. Yeah. So, and of course, this was created by Jonathan Glazer, who, of course, is also Jewish. Mm-hmm. If you saw the Academy Awards, his very, very controversial speech at the Academy Awards. He did Sexy Beast. He did Under the Skin. Mm-hmm. He also... he's done several other films. The film stars Christian Friedel and Sandra Huller. She was also in Anatomy of a Fall.
Mm-hmm. In which she was nominated for Best Actress.
And I know when we saw this film, you and I were like, oh, this looks like a typical Polish movie. And that was because we're both big fans of Paweł Pawlikowski.
Yep.
And the guy who shot this, Lucas Zal, also shot Ida and Cold War. So, Shelby, you want to cover some of the awards this film has won?
Yeah. So, at the Academy Awards, it won Best International Feature, and then also it won the Cannes Grand Prix. It also won Best Sound at the Academy Awards as well. At the Confederation International de la Presse Cinematography Prize, it won that as well.
It did. And that has a little acronym that's usually used. We don't usually say the whole thing, but it was the winner.
Yes.
So this film was something that we were fortunate enough to see in the cinema. It did screen at our local theater, and we were really excited to be able to see this. So why don't you give us the log line, Shelby? We'll kind of figure it out.
So it's very complicated. It's, it's going through actual historical events, but summarized up. German-occupied Poland, summer of 1943. More than anything, Hedwig, a mother of 5, wants to keep her well-organized life as it is. After all, she has worked her fingers to the bone to create a fragrant slice of paradise to raise her children, and nothing will change that. If only her husband, the distinguished SS officer and Auschwitz commander Rudolf Höss, weren't so burdened by his duties. But perfection is a fleeting illusion. As the oblivious life of the commandant's wife unravels in cloudless bliss, Rudolf finds himself swamped with work, saddled with overseeing the installation of a new ventilation system and a highly effective Toft & Sons multi-funnel non-stop incineration oven system. It's hard to imagine that just a hair's breadth away from the peace and idyllic Höss household, the unimaginable horrors of the final solution were unfolding in full swing. And as noisome fumes and muffled, blood-curdling noises blemish Hedwig's fragrant utopia, a question emerges. When evil becomes banal and indifference requires no effort, what separates man from beast?
This is a great film.
Wonderful film.
Strange at times. Mm-hmm. And the film actually opens to what seems like almost what would look like modern home video footage. People, like they're on a beach and they're playing and they seem like the typical family. But as the film progresses, it's really troubling.
Well, and it's because you're seeing this family who is, you know, running the camp at Auschwitz, and you don't see any of the horrors. It is all done completely through sound.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much seeing what appears to be a very typical family until things start to unravel and you're seeing and hearing a lot more of these pieces and these moments where it's, you know, terrific.
It's really odd because they feel like an aristocratic, wealthy family,
yes,
of course. And then the film opens and the mother is wearing a brand new mink coat. And the mink coat is obviously something that had been taken from a Jewish household. And it still had lipstick in the pocket.
Yeah.
They were obviously, of course, one of the ways that the Nazis financed the war was by taking the wealth of the Jewish people. And it is really troubling. There's a scene where one of the little boys is playing with gold teeth that had belonged to people. What's really odd about the film for me is how cavalier it's all treated.
Well, you have her at one point saying, well, you know, they call me the Queen of Auschwitz. And she's proud.
Yeah.
Incredibly proud of it.
She is more concerned about her station in society than the death of the people. It's a very, very troubling film. And we did some research afterwards and found that it was very historically accurate.
Incredibly historically accurate. Actually, I think that people were missing some of the production design within that, because if you go back and you look at the photographs from the actual location, it's almost shot for shot the same.
It's so creepy.
It's actually really impressive, and I don't think it's getting enough attention.
The production design is so good. They match those scenes to family photographs so closely. It's creepy.
It's also there's a scene with a little girl who is going into the camp to be able to help the those that are, you know, trapped within, and the little girl that's in there is based on a real woman, and they filmed within her actual house. They used her actual dress within there and her actual bike. Those are all real props from this woman's life. It's really, really incredible what they were able to do.
It is bizarre. There's a portion of the film where he loses his position because of like some political things, and then they bring someone else in. Then they return him to his position because the previous person couldn't exterminate people as efficiently. And he took so much pride in his work. He was obsessed with his work. It is the most troubling film.
A severe trigger warning.
Yeah, there's actually a scene where the little boys in the film are swimming in the river, and then they realize that they're covered in human remains and they have to bring them in and bathe them. I mean, it's a very, very troubling film.
Yeah.
I think the dad finds a jawbone in the
it's pretty visceral.
It's really, really troubling. And I think when I look at this, when I think of the great Polish films, right? And you think of other great filmmakers, I know Polakowski is one of your favorites. He's definitely one of mine. This film is right in there.
Agreed.
I mean, it is absolutely right in there with quality, you know. And it's the typical thing. I mean, it's kind of like when you watch Cold War, it's in 6 languages. This, I think, is in 3.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, you got to read subtitles. I mean, but I think pretty much anyone who's listening to this podcast is way past the, I don't like to listen to subtitles.
Yeah. Subtitles are good.
They're great. Yeah, they're great. You're missing out on most of world cinema if you don't, read subtitles. For me, this was one of my absolute favorite films of the past 12 months. I absolutely loved it. Terrific. Would highly recommend. I don't know if it's available yet on streaming, but I think soon.
I think, it actually might be. I'm not sure. If it'd check.
Okay.
But I know it is going to some theaters, so it's been kind of going around like the $5 faves and things like that.
If it is available on streaming, we'll go ahead and we'll put that on screen for the video viewers. So we'll make sure that we have that. I want to talk about a new favorite film of mine called 1001. For those who tuned into our last episode, we went ahead and did a summary of the Independent Spirit Awards and the winners of the Independent Spirit Awards. This was Best First Feature this past year. And the film was written and directed by A.V. Rockwell. She actually graduated from the NYU Tisch School. And she's absolutely fantastic. The film was shot by Eric Yu, and I'd never heard of Eric Yu before. I had done some smaller stuff. He has a BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts from NYU, and then went on to get an MFA at the University of Pennsylvania. Fantastically shot. Yeah. Shelby, what'd you think of this film?
I love this film. It may have taken over my top spot from last year.
Yeah.
It's really, really incredible. And, you know, what they were able to do with this, with the budget they had, and how long it took her to be able to actually get this film made after graduating.
She's 30. She's 32.
32. She graduated, I think, when she was about 25 or so.
Yeah, I would assume, yeah.
It's really, really wonderful. It's, it won the Gotham Awards, won the Gotham Award, Black Reel Award at the Independent Spirit Awards. It won Best First Feature and was nominated at the NAACP Image Awards, and it won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance.
I mean, how do you do better than that?
Yeah, you can't get it better than that. So the log line, just so everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. After unapologetic and fiercely loyal Inez kidnaps her son Terry from the foster care system, mother and son set out to reclaim their sense of home, identity, stability in a rapidly changing New York City.
And this film's got a lot of just hard turns in it.
Yes.
There's times you think it's going one way and it's just a hard left turn.
You are on the edge of your seat the whole time.
It is a gritty film. I mean, it brings me back to the 90s, and I think of some of those great films, you know, that are the New York black urban drama films of that time period.
You can really feel like Spike Lee's influence.
Yeah. I'm actually knee deep in this right now because I'm teaching a course called American Black Cinema. I've been doing black cinema stuff for about a year. And this was so cool to see. For people who don't realize it, Spike Lee actually teaches at NYU. So I think it's very likely that Rockwell was probably one of his students there. So, I mean, this is, when you look at this film, the acting is so good in it. I mean,
everyone.
We were watching it and I was like, I can't get over how good the acting is. I had never seen a single solitary person in this film ever before. And they were just performance after performance. Yeah. And it's just a great film.
And it is streaming too. So you can,
it is
watch
streaming.
It online.
Yeah. If you've got Amazon Prime, it's on Amazon Prime. Don't miss it.
Yeah. Watch it.
And it's 3 chapters. It reminded me a lot of Moonlight. For people who aren't aware of Moonlight, Moonlight is done in 3 chapters of a child's life. And this is done very much the same way. So it starts out, you've got a really little boy. He's like 8 or 8 years old, maybe not even. And then as like a middle school kid, and then later as a kid getting just about ready to graduate from high school. And it really starts out with this little boy, and Inez is just out of prison, finds him on the street and says, well, you know, son, I'm taking you, and abducts him out of the child care system. And it is an unbelievably good film. And a lot of this is about maternal love. A lot of it is about what it means to be family. The dad in the film, you know, there's a lot about paternity and about, it's just a terrific film.
It's really wonderful too, I think, to be able to see like such a raw New York voice right now. Because I kind of feel like for a little bit we were steering away from that. And it's really refreshing to see that, you know what, there are some really, really good New York filmmakers right now.
That's my favorite.
That people want to share and highlight. And I think especially right now, a black New York voice is wonderful, especially with a story like this.
It's my favorite. I love the New York films. I love the New York filmmakers. Always have. Yeah. I mean, it's my absolute favorite. So, I mean, I love the grit of this. And I think what's really cool is I listened to, and I can't remember what festival it was from. There's a really good interview on YouTube with A.V. Rockwell. And she talks a lot about New York. And she said she didn't want to show New York as this. She didn't want it to be a love letter to New York. She wanted it to be real. Yeah. And her thing was that I love New York, but I love it, you know, even with all of its faults. Yeah. And there's a lot about Giuliani and what Giuliani did in New York, and about The thing where you could frisk anybody at any given time, which actually eventually led to police violence. I mean, there was a lot of those kinds of things that went on in that evolution of New York. But I think from a production standpoint, what really excited me about this picture is that the 3 different periods were all shot with different lenses. So it was shot digitally, but using different lenses to emulate a look of each period differently. And it's so cleverly done. So it really got me thinking about how I shoot my stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, maybe I should be doing that. And the New York filmmakers are so into vintage glass right now. The vintage lenses are such a thing. And even films like The Creator was shot on vintage glass too. So, I mean, there's a lot of that, retrofitting old glass to make things. And I just thought this was super cool.
Yeah, I loved this film. I thought it was fantastic. I think it's probably maybe my number 1 of last year now.
I know. Everyone's going to think we just love all the films, but we tend to watch the things we think we're going to like. If we don't think we're going to like it, we're not going to watch it. So, I mean, that's really kind of the case. So, really, really love that. Anything else on this one?
No, I think that summed it up.
Well, let's move on to some big news.
Industry buzz.
I know all those RED users are going to have to buy some Nikon t-shirts because they are owned by Nikon now. So this was kind of a weird surprise. They were in a big fight, Nikon and RED. So what had happened was Nikon had a new camera that used a RAW format that was very similar to RED's RAW format, and they ended up in a big patent fight about a firmware update on the Nikon Z9. For people who don't know, RED is really, really protective about their codec because it's really kind of what sets them apart in a lot of ways. And they, that's always been kind of the case with them. So why the heck would RED buy Nikon?
Cool.
Well, I think the big...
Other way around.
Or I should say Nikon buy RED, rather. Why would Nikon buy RED? Well, because Sony, for example, has a really awesome small body cinema camera line using full frame sensors. Also, if you take a look at... there are several companies out there too. Blackmagic has a really successful... The Pocket Cinema camera, which is getting kind of old now. They keep revising it, but still a really great camera. There's several. Nikon has not been keeping up. I mean, they've really had a hard time. By purchasing RED, they're going to get the RED sensor. And the RED sensor is a little bit different because it's a stitched sensor. I'm not going to get all the technical about that, but it's a stitched sensor.
You can Google it.
Well, what that means is that it's kind of like multiple sensors stitched together, kind of sewn together in kind of a way. It is different, and RED cameras are fantastic for doing compositing work. So if you look at them, like they did a lot of stuff for the Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that, because they're really great. Also, their firmware, or not their firmware, but their codec is really, really valuable. So it's going to make Nikon a small competing camera format. And Shelby's used more small cameras than me.
Yeah, I think it's a good purchase. I think it's smart on Nikon's part. Because I think Nikon was kind of falling behind, and Nikon is typically, we associate that with photography, not with
stills.
film.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. And I think it's a smart buy. REDs are great cameras, and it'll be interesting though. I think it'll make the industry a little bit more competitive, which I think is...
Yeah, and there may be some things that will improve in the RED camera too. Yeah. Temperature management's always been an issue with RED cameras. And they're fine. We have
that issue with a lot of the small bodies.
Yeah, so. I mean, a lot of cameras have problems. I mean, we shoot on a Blackmagic Ursa 12, and it has temperature problems sometimes. Also, it has external recording issues sometimes too. But, I mean, it's part of the game. You know how that works. But anyway. Tech. So, Shelby, what's new in Iowa?
A lot is new in Iowa, and I've had some people asking about this, so I'm glad that we're covering it.
Okay.
The Iowa Tax Film Incentive. So last week we talked about the Nebraska Tax Film Incentive. There is also one happening across the border over in Iowa. So this is the House Study Bill 731, if you want to read up on it. It would allow for studios producing bigger budget projects in Iowa to receive a 30% rebate for qualified spending in a 2-year pilot period from 2025 to 2026. The proposal comes years after a previous iteration of film credits in Iowa. It was plagued by scandal and led to years of court battles. $26 million in property damages, and $26 million in improperly distributed credits and 7 convictions.
The cautionary tale.
The cautionary tale that everyone in the Midwest talks about.
Everyone you travel, there are only 13 states in the United States that don't have an active film incentive. Yes. Iowa and Nebraska are 2. Nebraska's really well on their way to getting theirs through. I'm very confident that will go through. I could be wrong, but I'm very confident about it. Shelby and I were actually involved in that. We actually went and testified at that, and we were very, very involved. We haven't been asked in Iowa to do this, but we're willing. Ask us, we'll come. But one of the things is that there was a lack of auditing, and it really ended up being a lot of abuse. And then for the states that don't have a tax credit, they always would talk about Iowa. When we got down to Oklahoma, a while back, Iowa was what they talked about. They were like, oh, Iowa. Yeah, Iowa. Iowa's the case study for the misuse of the film incentive. Yep. So it was something that Iowa is now revisiting. And a big part of this is our friends at Renovo were involved in there. Renovo Studios, for people who don't know, Renovo is a really great studio in Iowa. They just did Wildcat. Yep. Which was, I can't remember if it was written by or produced by...
Well, it's Ethan Hawke's film.
I can't remember if he both wrote and directed. I'm not sure. But it's Ethan...
directed it.
Is it? It's Ethan Hawke's film with his daughter. Right? And and they produced part of that film, right? So Renova was really involved in that. So they're looking at getting bigger projects. And their studios are unreal. If you have a chance to get over there, their studio is as nice as any LA studio. It is fantastic. I would definitely
suggest taking a tour. Especially, if you're somebody that's interested too in like special effects or working in that, I think that would be a
and it is
good place to
top notch. I walked into their equipment room and they had multiple RE Alexas laying there. They had sky panels. Yeah. The top. They have an LED wall. They had a more modern LED wall than the one they used on The Mandalorian. It's a fantastic studio, equipped like crazy and ready for production. Yep. So and they're doing big stuff. So for them, they've got a big stake in this. This is something they definitely wanted. So and they're great. We've been there a couple of times. We were there they had a really good women in film seminar. Was it 2 years ago? It was 2 years ago.
I think it was 2 years. Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome. It was super fun. And we had a really great time. Oh, and on a side note, there's a restaurant in that town that is Mexican Cajun. Don't want to miss it. It's awesome. So anyway, just a fun side note. It's all about the food with us. Okay.
So, and just an update on that too. Lawmakers have suggested some tweaks to the existing program, such as lowering the minimum budget for a film to qualify for a rebate, which is currently, the minimum is at $1 million. So possibly we could be seeing some more, lower budget indies, which would be great.
Well, I think one of the things is, and this was something we went to a filmmakers meetup in Nebraska shortly after it was in Omaha, and it was shortly after, and they said, well, we don't feel like the incentive is really geared for the small filmmaker. It's not. It's geared for the large filmmaker, so the small filmmaker can work for the large filmmaker, which is fine. But Iowa's is going to be a little bit more geared toward the small filmmaker, which is great.
Well, and it's good too because with having the 2 neighboring states, it provides opportunities on both sides for if you're looking for kind of maybe something more big budget, or if you're looking to be more independent. I think you have a lot more opportunity and more wiggle room there. And
we need to really be honest. I think Iowa, for example, has got a way more active film community. There were 13 features made in Iowa in the past 12 months. Nebraska had a bigger film. They had the Snack Shack, which was made, which is going to be a big film. I'm hearing now that it's going to screen at over 400 theaters nationwide, so that's a big deal. I've got a lot of friends that worked on that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And so Nebraska's direction is a little bit different. So I'm thinking it's going to help both communities a lot.
I think
so these two incentives, and I'm so happy they're kind of, going hand in hand. They're going through the tweak stage. Like right now, the lawmakers are kind of, tweaking the existing program. They're lowering the minimum budgets for films. They're doing some different things. They are, I would say, maybe a month or even two, maybe behind the Nebraska incentive, as far as their stage goes.
So we should be hearing updates about it.
Yeah, we're going to hear it. So if there's an opportunity to testify in this, make sure if you're an active filmmaker in Iowa, you get involved in this. Be paying attention to those bills and stuff.
And
it affects us all.
And the bill number, again, just for anybody listening who wants to look it up, is 731. So
that would be great.
Take a look.
Well, let's move on to tech news.
Whoop.
This one caught everybody by surprise. Vazen lenses went out of business. It was overnight. Now, if you're not really familiar with Vazen, they've been open a little less than 5 years, and they shut down. Now, this was an engineer named Vazen, I believe it's Lau, founded it, and they were making great lenses. These were budget-priced anamorphic lenses, and they were at low prices. I mean, you were seeing anamorphics, and this is going to sound expensive, but full frame, Super 35 anamorphics for like $8,000 and less, which is an unbelievable price point.
Yeah.
So they had a hard time and very suddenly kind of went out of business. So they were trying to kind of fill the void in the market, doing anamorphic cinematic lenses, and they had EF mounts, RF mounts. They were doing micro four thirds. I think they had some PL mounts in their line too. So they were building stuff for everything, but it really surprised everyone when they closed. So now what's going to happen is this is going to make, for me, we're all waiting for these Leiwa. We covered those on a previous one. They've got a real great market to fill there. There's also a lens called the Glazer, and that is a fantastic anamorphic lens, budget priced. I think they've got a kit for about $6,000. That's a great kit. So, I mean, I think it's really going to open up the lens market. You know, there's always the expression, you date your camera, but you marry your lenses.
It's true.
You know, so you want to have that glass. And especially now we're with the films we're talking about, you know, a lot of people are using vintage glass and old glass, got your go-to lenses. I mean, I've got an old Zeiss lens, 50 millimeter Zeiss lens that I just love. And I grab that thing all the time, and it's several years old. So, I mean, it just depends on what you're doing with that. So I don't know. Did this Vazen lens thing catch you by surprise too?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'll be curious to see kind of how some of these other manufacturers react to it and how they choose to fill the void. And honestly, I'll be kind of interested to see what the pricing looks like afterward, because it did take a competitor out and somebody who was being able to lower some of those prices. So I'll be curious to see if anything goes up or down. Well,
and we're getting to a point that you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of pros in small markets want to shoot anamorphic, and clients are asking for it. And then for those of you who don't know, we had a little explanation what anamorphic was on our previous episode. But I think also when we take a look at the Leiwa lens kit, we talked about that, their new anamorphic lens kit, which allows you to zoom. That kit we originally thought was about $8,000. We saw a release price point today for $5,800 for that. And I was really excited because my dean at the college set aside $5,800 for some Glazer lenses. And I changed that today. I said,
maybe something
I think we need to change from this to the Leiwa lenses. So hopefully,
and that's such a good price point for indies, because I mean, that's so much in one lens.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's incredible.
Well, and I think for us as a school, I mean, to be able to afford anamorphic lenses for the students and for them to be able to shoot on those lenses and have that professional experience, especially, our big camera's a Super 35 full frame, to get a PL mounted anamorphic lens for a student. Fantastic. I mean, and we're going to have two of them, so it's going to be great. They're going to have a great experience. The other tech thing that we were really surprised, and I don't know if this just caught me by storm, but Zoom, who's a maker of sound recorders, has their floating point recording system. And for those of you who aren't familiar with floating point, you need to look it up. It really radically changed how we did sound. I take a look at the last two features we did. We did between the lines, which we used a Zoom F4, which didn't have floating point, and we got good sound. We got good sound. We moved up to a Zoom F6, And that thing brought back some of the best sound ever.
I mean, high wind, everything else.
Crazy.
Beautiful sound.
And also when we look at that too, I think one of the things about, and we did make a few other changes in there, you know, other than just the F6, but it was kind of an expensive change. But now Zoom has a small recorder, and this is, they've got the little H4. And if you're not familiar with the H4, that little recorder's got the little crossed microphones. It's really great for recording ambient sound in ambient sound environments. Mm-hmm. But it also has, they added floating point to it, and it's only $200. So if you're, you know, a hobbyist filmmaker or a beginning filmmaker, and you don't have a big budget, you can get a floating point sound recorder for $200.
Yep.
So it's unbelievable. And, you know, I would say really the only other sound recorders that I like this much are the ones by Sound Devices. And they're crazy expensive. Sound Devices are a lot more money. They're great, but they're a lot more money. So here you can get this. And if you don't need a lot of tracks, I mean, I think the Zoom H4, I think is two, it might be, I don't think it's up to 4. I think it's two tracks. Yeah. But it's just an XLR. So it's a great connection. And I just can't get over it. I was giving a lecture at the school talking about the Zoom H4, and one of the students reached in his bag and pulled one out and said, "You mean this?" And he pulled it out, and we started to laugh, and we kind of passed it around the room. It just so happened that he had bought one because, you know, he had known about the floating point. So it was just such a cool thing.
It's such a great thing though too, especially for younger filmmakers or just people starting out filmmaking, because sound can make or break your film. I mean, it's one of the number one things that'll keep you out of a festival is bad sound.
Yeah, it'll kill your film.
So being able to like get into floating point from such a low price point,
crazy.
That's crazy, and it's a really, really good opportunity. So I think it's something to add to the kit.
And maybe you don't have a lot of experience in post-production sound, and it's such a great thing to come in with that, and it just records at such a huge, you know, a huge range.
Yeah.
It's great. And, you know, let's be honest, sound's complicated. I mean, post-production sound, you know, I wanted to be a sound engineer, sold some of the original, you know, sound equipment systems. I'm not going to show my age, but way back, the digital systems. But learning good post-production sound is really tough. I actually teach a course, a 16-week course in sound, in which we do all of that. But floating point just radically changed the collection portion of that for everybody. So being able to get it at such a low price point is crazy. So we're all really excited about it.
For sure.
I did want to talk about something. I had someone ask me online about the digital photo S300 Lite. Mm-hmm. And it was a thing where they said, "Hey, Mike, do you know, we want RE Sky panels.
Don't we all?
But they're expensive, RE Sky panels. The small ones, I think are, $15,000, something like that. They're expensive. Yeah. But the Sky panel, if people don't know, is a digitally controlled LED panel light. They're very powerful, but they can also do effect simulation and a few other things too. There are several people that make those. Aperture makes one. That's a really popular light, but it's an expensive light.
Yeah.
But the digital photo S300 is one of the equivalents. I was able last year, I went to a festival and a guy he had a whole fleet of them. And I thought they were Sky panels. I was like, wow. And I got up close and he goes, no. There's these digital photo S300s. And they start at about $1,500 per light. And I know you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's an astronomical.
But compared to a Sky panel.
Yeah, compared to a Sky panel. Yeah, it's a fraction of what a Sky panel would be. But they come with a remote control with them, and they're 300 watts, 30,000 lumens. They run between 2,800 and 9,900 Kelvin. One of the things is they're V-mount battery compatible, and I love V-mount battery. Every single thing that I use is V-mount. Yep. I mean, from lights to cameras to everything is standardized on V-mount. If you want to use a controller, it's DMX controlled. And it's got a bunch of cool programmable patterns in it.
which I think is really cool.
Oh, we could have used it.
Yeah.
This summer. So
well, just reading off, I think, just for help. Some of the effects modes are police lights, club lights, lightning, candlelight, fireworks, light strobes, clouds, fire, paparazzi cameras. I mean, there's a lot of so many things that you can do with these.
We so desperately wanted to get 3 or 4 sky panels for some of the stuff we did with the cross, because we had all these. When we did the cross burning scenes, we wanted to. We shot them outside, and we really wanted to have something that would emulate that. And we needed sky panels to do it, but they just wasn't in our budget. Yeah. So,
but these guys.
But yeah, but this
is a
much
better opportunity.
Absolutely. I feel bad. My friend that has this is several states away, but so we couldn't have borrowed those. But it was one of those things that was like, renting sky panels is tough. I mean, I suppose we could have probably drove halfway across the state to Novo and got some, but I mean, it is one of those things. They do also work really, really cool when hooked in conjunction. Street lights are awesome in these. So you can set it up so it looks like you're driving past streetlights for stationary work. There's a lot of great things that can be done with them. So I know everybody gets really hung up on the sky panel and that, but there are some great equivalents. Aperture's got great stuff. They've got some really great, Digiphoto's got some great stuff. There are several manufacturers with great things. So if you get a chance to go to NAB, National Association of Broadcasters convention, you're able to see a lot of those things and get a really good feel for it. We've got a big set of Dracast lights. We got those at the college because one of the engineers saw them and just fell in love with Dracast, and we've been using them. They're in pretty rough shape now because I've got 65 film students every semester using this set of lights, but they've held up incredibly well. We've only broke one light in the past 5 years. So, I mean, that's a testament to see. Yeah. I mean, to see what they've done. So I don't know. Any other questions or anything? No,
I think that sums up the tech news.
Okay, on our next segment, we're very excited to have Tony Bonacci and Christine Burright on our show today. Yes. And we're very excited. They've got a brand new movie that just came out called The Headliner. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I saw the trailer for this. It looks absolutely dynamite.
Fantastic.
I know you had a sold out premiere at the Omaha Film Festival. So congratulations on your premiere. And of course, too, looking at this, I was told that this is actually your first feature.
Yeah, it's both of our first features.
Yeah.
So what was that like? I remember my first feature. So what was that like? What's that experience?
Oh yeah, it was incredible. So Tony actually produced my first short film. Which was the headliner, the concept that this one is based off of. So being able to go through from a short film all the way to a feature film, the writing process, the production, all of that with Tony, it was awesome. It was such a great first experience. I couldn't have asked for anything better.
But producing is tough, right? Especially producing a feature. Tony, you want to speak to that for us?
Yeah, it was like, I always say it's the hardest thing that I've ever done, and I'm never doing it again. At least I just be on the producing side of it. It was just insane, absolutely chaotic, and just like so hard. So I was like, okay, I'll direct again, but I never want to produce ever again. So
I'm a producer. I get it.
Yeah, Shelby produces. Actually, that's Shelby's day gig. She produces for a living. So
I get it. Run away as far as you can, honestly.
But it's kind of funny. I always think of it as kind of like, having a child a little bit. Because, they always talk about how awful labor is. But yet women have a baby like, I'd have another one. Even though it was awful.
That's producing.
That's producing, yeah.
Labor.
And we finished our fourth feature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, has it been 4? And then it was a period piece from the 20s. And it got done. I was like, I'm never doing that again. And sure enough, I'm writing a period piece again. So I think we forget the pain as we kind of go through it. But Christine, I wanted to bring up, you said this started as a concept short. I looked this up on IMDb and it said 2017. Is that right?
Yeah, the short was produced in 2017. The script was finished in 2019. It was supposed to shoot in 2020, but 2020.
Oh yeah. I'd like to get into, just so our audience knows what the film's about. I'm just going to read the log line quick so that way everybody is up to speed on what we're talking about. So our log line, the film follows Chad Allen, who is a stand-up comedian trying to find his voice and break out of the Omaha scene. As he works on material in his career, Chad also finds himself working on his relationships with his ex-wife, manager, best friend, adult daughter, and potential love interest. When the career opportunity of a lifetime presents itself, Chad has to decide which is more important, advancing his career or being there for the people that need him.
So obviously this is writing comedy. So that is so tough.
Yeah.
So Christine, is all the humor in here you?
Yeah, so except for the stand-up bits. So the stand-up comedians featured,
Okay.
these are people that Tony love and respects in the local Omaha scene. So Tony wanted to really honor the local comedians and let them write their own stand-up routines. But yeah, everything else in the script is mine.
What was the collaboration process like then? Like working with these comedians and like being able to bring that stand up into it. And I mean, I know like as a writer, sometimes it's a little hard to feel like you're kind of relinquishing a little bit of creative control in that. And like, well, what is the stand up comedian going to say? What was that process like in that collaboration?
I just literally left it like blank, like insert stand-up comedy here. And I was like, Tony can deal with it.
We knew that basically I had a stand-up comic, Zach Peterson, write the lead character stand-up based on what Christine wrote. So like it kind of fit in a little bit. Yeah. So like it says like, oh, have him joke about this scenario. He goes axe throwing with the love interest or just, so he wrote a lot of stuff based on what she wrote. And so it just worked out perfectly. Yeah.
Well, and I think one of Shelby's friends works at SNL and
Yeah.
we talk all the time. But I think one of the things that's really fun is that's kind of a wild card, right?
Yeah.
The humor part, because I don't know. So how much creative freedom did they get?
So the comics, I gave them complete creative freedom as far as like, I mean, of course I chose the bits that I use, but as far as their set, they just did their actual stuff. And there's some pretty like dirty, some blasphemous stuff. Like, but the thing is like Christine and I both aren't necessarily offended by anything.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's like, yeah, something that's like mean or evil or something like that. But like just as far as something being dirty or like whatever, we don't really care. So we kind of like, yeah, they did their normal sets and then I just chose what bits I wanted to use. Actually, I guess my mom was apologizing for some of the black. And
That
I was
would be
like,
my
what?
mom, yeah.
What? Somebody told me she was, and I was like, oh my gosh. Somebody was like, did your mom tell you that? And I was like, no.
That's so interesting then. So did you just go in then on set and just go like, okay, we're going to work through these now? Or what kind of was that process like in that writing? I mean, was it, they're writing the jokes and then sending these back to you? Or was it just, we're going to kind of play and riff and we'll deal with it later in the editing process?
So Zach, who wrote the bits based on Christine's writing, he actually wrote bits and then sent them to me so that I could kind of know what he was thinking.
Nice.
But that's all that we really had to approve. So for all the other stand-up in the movie, it's just we had them come like shoot their set. Like we knew that they were just going to do their thing, and we just shot it 2 times basically so that we could get a wide and a close-up. So
fantastic.
That sounds like a lot of editing to me.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
A lot of cutting it down.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'd like to get into a little bit, because we are talking about like the writing and then also, like the comedy. What exactly are your backgrounds, with whether it be writing, filmmaking, comedy? How exactly did you get into all this?
Yeah, I'm just a comedy writer. It's what I write. I've written some drama, like some sci-fi, but comedy is always what I go back to. Which I know is like not a lot of people's first like love. It's not what they fall into first. They kind of start in a different area and maybe find comedy eventually, but it's what I started at. It's what I love. So
Mm-hmm. And you have a formal education though?
I do. I have an undergraduate degree in creative nonfiction and a graduate degree in screenwriting.
Ah, like you.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
not creative nonfiction, but
Yeah,
your
but
graduate degree.
yeah, we're both screenwriting MFAs.
So very good.
Yeah.
And Tony, how about you? How'd you get into production?
So I'm 40 now, and I started just by making shorts when I was like 17 or so. And then I went to Omaha Public Schools Career Center for video production. And so
Yeah.
that was honestly all I really did is that was what made me get into like kind of making stuff is both like being introduced to certain movies and then also going there is what kind of sparked it. And that I went there, yeah, like at the end of high school. And then the teacher actually let me still come there for like another year or two
Nice.
because he was like, oh, even though you graduated, if you want to come work on stuff, feel free. So I would do that. And then, but then, yeah, I've been making shorts and music videos since then for like 20 years now. And I've just like worked on sets as like a PA to start and then assistant director. And then I've just been kind of working in the industry in Omaha for a long time. And so this was like, yeah, my first opportunity to make the feature. So I made it a goal to do it by the time I turned 40. So
Nice.
You know, that brought me to something really interesting. I was kind of curious looking at this. I was thinking a little bit, I think it might be an Adam Sandler movie that has some stand-up comedy in it. I'm trying to think of the one.
yeah, funny people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Funny
So
people.
that's kind of what the trailer kind of,
Yeah.
that kind of reminded me of this. So tell me, was there any particular films that really stood out to you in what you were looking to do?
So Christine and I have been talking about that recently, and I don't have any particular things that I was like, oh, that's inspiring. Like, but I do say, of course, everything like that I've seen is all like a cumulative like inspiration. But there was nothing specifically that I was thinking or anything like that. So, and I asked Christine the same thing. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to write the kind of comedy that I like, which I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. I love rewatchable comedy. I love
Yeah.
comfort comedy. A film that you've seen it 10, 15, 80 times, but you love the jokes, you love the characters, and so you keep going back to it. So
Yeah.
that was just that's always what I aspire to write. Great characters, funny dialogue, make it snap. So
I love that idea of the rewatchable comedy. There was that period of time where Judd Apatow just had one home run after another.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just every one of those films, you could watch them over and over and over again. And I think actually I looked at a list of some of the most taught films in film schools. One of them is The 40-Year-Old Virgin. That is considered one of the most taught films, which you wouldn't think of. But it is because its structure is so great and it's so funny and so watchable. And I think really there's something very human about it, I think too.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we see reflected in this as well. And I'm really excited too about this film because I think this is something that, I think a lot of the industry has been lacking for a long time is like those comedies. I feel like people are trying to bring those back again because we've spent so long kind of without them. And, like Booksmart was starting to come back and pushing it a little bit more of, hey, I think we need some more comedies. But I'm really excited, too, just to be able to see this kind of work being done on an indie level. And, something that is local and we're able to talk about this. I think it's fantastic.
And here, done in
Here,
Omaha.
yes,
So
it's
that's
great.
even better. So this brings up another big question. How tough was this to cast?
So the casting wasn't necessarily super hard, but so my trick in Omaha, it's not necessarily a trick, but it's like I cast mainly stage actors because that's really like the options here in the Midwest. So, or at least in Omaha. I always say that like if somebody tells you they're a film actor like here, it's kind of like I'm skeptical. But and then I cast friends that I know have the confidence to do it and stuff. Like, just people that are characters and like whenever I cast friends, it's like I just want you to be yourself because like that's like if I know they won't be shy, then it's good. Yeah.
It's like an inch from acting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's really good.
Fantastic. So speaking of like going into the casting and then obviously casting locally, what was it like filming in Omaha?
It was really easy. So the thing about Omaha is like I hear the horror stories about LA and New York, which I'm not putting them down because I would love to work there someday. But Omaha is like you can literally just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like they're like, yes, please come shoot here for free. And then also I asked somebody, I was like, oh, do we need like a permit for Omaha? And she was just like, no. Like, unless you're trying to block a street or something, like, yeah, like you're just shooting like at locations and stuff. She was like, it's fine. So it's easy. Yeah, I like it. It's like very accommodating. People are like excited to help out and offer up their places and stuff like that. So very affordable.
And now I have a question for Christine. I think especially, I always wonder this because I think of myself as a writer first. Do you have any aspirations of producing or directing yourself, or are you happy behind the keyboard?
No, so I have directed, I have produced
Okay.
shorts. My partner and I, we have a feature screenplay that I plan to direct. We're looking for some money to produce it. So yeah, I think that like as a writer, I think it's valuable to have these other hats and to be able to do these other things, especially I think as a female writer, to be able to walk onto set and assert your voice and your confidence and your vision. I think that those are valuable skills to have, on the set, in the writer's room, in a production office, anywhere you go.
That's actually a really great thing too, because I have that issue all the time. Like being a female writer is like, okay, well, you need to be able to wear every single hat, and especially writing comedy, I feel like it's such a male dominated game. Was that something that you felt a little bit of pressure going into this, like as a female writer working in comedy? How has that experience been for you?
No, it was great. I didn't necessarily feel any pressure. I mean, obviously, Tony's a man. The two leads he brought to me were men, and he was just kind of like, these are the characters I want. Um, and I was like, great. I've never written a male protagonist before, but why not start now? So I did, and I loved it. I loved the process of writing. Someone who is very very unlike me, but still kind of has my heart and my vulnerabilities and my values. And then I surrounded these like the male protagonist and his like best friend. I surrounded them with strong women. It was just like, okay, well, if the two main characters in the film are men, literally everybody else is going to be a woman to balance it out.
Yes.
I love it.
And it was and it was fine. Tony was like, yeah, I love it. So that just became kind of like the concept of the film, that there's this man and he's sort of bumbling his way through life, and the women around him kind of come together and are like, look, you got to get it together because enough is enough. Like, you're a grown ass man. What are you doing? Um, and you know what? And I love that. I think there was this like whole era of like grown baby man comedy, and I think
Yeah.
that like we as a culture are over it, and smart
Yeah.
we want smart characters in comedies, whether they're men or women. And I think that it's just kind of like, yeah, I can write a man.
It's
Did it,
fantastic.
done. What's next? So
I always make sure to remind people that Christine wrote it, because some of the stuff that's so
yeah.
like either dirty or like could be offensive coming from me. I'm like, I didn't
Yeah.
write
Yeah.
that.
There was
Even though
there
I
was
love.
there was one there was one scene that's a little like sexual harassy.
Yeah.
And Tony like he put me in that scene. I'm like the person who gets harassed. He's just like, just to make it clear, like, she wrote it and she's getting
He wrote
harassed.
this.
So like, if you have a problem with it, talk to her. Like,
Oh
she
my
did it, not
God.
me.
That's so great though, because that's such a great power, like as a writer, and for you to be able to have that, and like it's a great authority. That's something that we've been talking about a lot with like Poor Things, and with Emma Stone being a producer on that.
Hmm.
It's like complete control at all times. It's really something special. So I love that. It's wonderful.
So I think I only have one more question, and that is, if you're able to talk about it, what is next?
Yeah.
What's next? First, what's plans for the film? And then second, do you have any new projects coming up?
So for the film, I've entered about 50 film festivals, so I'm just kind of like waiting on getting word back if we get into any.
Yeah.
It's I know it's pretty hard. We've gotten a few rejections. So we just had a premiere at Omaha Film Festival, of course. But we've gotten some rejections, and I'm starting to think that it's probably like really hard to program like a feature like ours.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you guys think, but I kind of am starting to have the idea that maybe like a lot of festivals program almost like mainstream type features as far as, and it's weird because they'll be like, these independent film festivals, but like the thing is they still want to program kind of like high-end commercial movies. And the thing about that is they get plenty of submissions that are like multi-million-dollar movies because all those movies now are sending those out to every festival and everything. So it's like, so that's who we're competing against. But
it is odd. I mean, we've seen a run of Christmas movies that the festivals are filled with like these kind of Hallmark type Christmas movies. And we've seen a lot of that, which is not necessarily independent pricing.
The industry's definitely
ours is the edgy Hallmark Christmas movie.
I mean, there is a lot of that, and there is a commercial demand for it. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. It's definitely not what we make, but I mean, and that's fine. But there is a place for everyone. But the thing I think, especially for us, is we may get rejected by something local and then win a big national thing. So it's very strange about how it works. And and the flavor of festivals varies so much. And not just domestic, international too. So it's just, I don't know. The rejection is part of the game, I guess.
And so we're just waiting on that. And then obviously we'd want it streaming on something. And I don't know what specifically will happen. I know that there's so many features out there, but I'm just hoping for the best with getting a little bit of a streaming deal or something. So be
cautious.
I'm not going to fall for any of those. I know there's those scam brokers that are like, we can get your movie streaming, and then you pay them money, and all they do is what you can do yourself.
Exactly.
So I might go the indie route if we don't end up getting any type of deal or anything. So
there's some great things you can do when you self-distribute, some great stuff.
And then that way you're also getting all the money. So
ownership. Absolutely.
Oh, and then as far as what's next, I shot a music video for the band Cursive that's going to come out sometime.
Neat.
And then I'm trying to think. I'm shooting a friend's comedy special. My friend Cameron Logsdon we're shooting his comedy special at the end of the month. And then that's all I have for now. I want to direct another feature, but I got to find one. So
you got to have a script.
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm not producing though. So we got to find like somebody that wants to have me direct. So. So that's going to be hard.
Christine, how about you? Do you have anything you can talk about?
I have a couple shorts. I'm producing one with my friend Kate Robertson Pryor, and then I'm writing and co-directing. I'm writing and co-directing a second short with her. She's producing and starring in it. And then some other bigger stuff, with Kate on the schedule for 2024. My partner and I are working on an animated web series. We have a short, we have a feature, that we're trying to get into production. So, I mean, all kinds of irons in the fire. So we'll see what happens.
That's awesome.
Well, I can't tell you how much fun this has been having you on the show. So thank you so much. And it was wonderful to have met you. Like I said, this was really kind of, I know I'd met Tony in passing just a little bit on a still shoot. I didn't realize until he'd said something to me, but it's really nice to talk to you guys, at least a little kind of informally and stuff. And hopefully we'll see you on the festival circuit or someplace around.
For sure.
Yeah. Nice to meet you guys. And thanks for having us on.
Thanks. Yeah, you too. Thank you.
We're going to see everybody in a couple weeks here on the Depth of Field podcast. So make sure to go ahead and tune in on all your favorite platforms. So until next time, we'll see you later.
Thank you for listening to Depth of Field, and check us out on YouTube and Spotify, where we post new episodes every 2 weeks.